sometimes it's difficult to come up with content, especially when you have a channel that's based really on responding to what others have to say and offering a defense for your beliefs. So that said, I didn't want to necessarily do like a John MacArthur, although I definitely will be doing that in the future, or a Reformed Wiki, because they've been done recently by other bigger and frankly better Catholic channels. But I came across this guy, and after the first minute and a half, I thought I knew where the video was going. And then it takes an insane right turn. So, buckle up, grab your beers, let's go.
Protestants are heretics for believing the Bible?
No, not at all. You're heretics because you ripped books out of the Bible and changed what the church had been teaching for 1,500 years.
Hi, Father Ian Van Heusen here. So I want to get into this idea, is Protestantism a heresy? And the short answer is yes. Catholicism teaches that you need the sacraments. You need to be baptized. You need to receive the Eucharist. You need all 7 sacraments. And you need them. They're necessary for salvation. Now, they're necessary for salvation.
Yes, thank you for emphasizing that for me. Saves me some time. On a separate note, I apologize for the bad audio. It's that bad on the original recording. I don't know if he had his gain too high or something, but the audio is pretty much peaking the whole way through.
I know that could be misunderstood, but this is precisely why I would say we need to recognize that Protestantism is a heresy. But the reality is many of their principles, they don't hold up. The ideas like sola scriptura.
Just going to point out, there's a lot of jump cuts there. So he's not even pretending to give you the full context of what this guy is saying.
If anyone says that the guilt is remitted to every penitent sinner after the grace of justification has been received, and that the debt of eternal punishment is so blotted out that there remains no debt of temporal punishment to be discharged either in this world or in the next in purgatory before the entrance to the kingdom of heaven can be opened, let him be anathema. They do not preach the same gospel.
That's true. We teach the actual gospel. Also, if you'll allow me a little bit of a self-indulgent moment here, how does this guy have 5 times my subscribers when he's putting out audio garbage like that? Seriously.
What is heresy? According to Merriam-Webster, heresy is adherence to a religious opinion contrary to church dogma, or an opinion or doctrine contrary to church dogma.
Okay. You just trying to pad the runtime here?
According to the Catholic Church, deciding to believe that God created heaven and earth in 6 days is considered heresy.
What? No, this is completely false. You are absolutely allowed to be a young earth creationist as a Catholic. Are you going to be agreeing with the last 3-4 popes? No. Are you going to be agreeing with most of the theologians and Catholic scientists? No. Is there anything theologically wrong about believing in young earth creationism? No. Some of the church fathers believed it, some didn't. Robert Sungenis is a very famous example of a fantastic Catholic apologist who holds to a young earth. And also some other strange theories, but when it comes to defending the Catholic faith, I've always found him to be rather great.
And they're having a interview here with a Jesuit. Consul Magno likes to point out that creationism is a 19th century Protestant heresy. Isn't that interesting? The ancient church fathers knew better than to interpret the Bible that way. The Jesuits got their first telescope after Galileo published his extraordinary findings that Jupiter had 4 moons.
It's always the Jesuits. But in all seriousness, the Jesuit being quoted in this article that I've never heard of, the guy's actually a genius. He has the highest education and is regarded as a genius among his peers. And absolutely should be listened to. And should be taken into consideration when he has an opinion. However, this is just his opinion. And it is not formal church teaching. And that's an important thing to remember, because not all Protestants believe in a young earth creation. Many, many Protestants do not. And so if someone who does not speaks for Protestants, this guy could say, wait, you don't represent all Protestants. Well, this guy doesn't represent all Catholics because he's not speaking official Catholic teaching.
It begs the question whether the Catholic Church truly believes in the God of the Bible or in a different God.
It most certainly does not beg that question. In fact, that is a massive, massive leap in logic. And would this guy say that William Lane Craig or Hugh Ross aren't real Christians or follow a different God because they believe in an old earth creation?
What else does the Catholic Church consider heresy? Sola Scriptura, or Scripture alone. If you believe that the Bible alone is the essential and absolute source of your Christian faith, including salvation, eternity, and the origin of life as recorded in Genesis, the Catholic Church considers you a heretic.
Okay, we're going to try to unpack a whole lot of nonsense in just a few seconds here. 1. Sola Scriptura is not in the Bible. It's not found in the Church Fathers. It is, in fact, a modern invention, only about 500 years old. Whereas the Church has been teaching with authority for 2,000 years now. 2. I've done a couple videos addressing Sola Scriptura, and you'll find that when I react to these Protestants, they never come up with the same definition of Sola Scriptura. Everyone has their own definition of what it is, so it's impossible to actually pin it down. And lastly, most Catholics would reject his interpretation of Genesis. We do not reject Genesis. And I might even be overstating how many Catholics are opposed to a young earth creation. I might be underestimating how many there are. You're allowed to believe in a young earth.
What else does the Catholic Church consider heresy?
We are saved by faith and grace alone.
That is, your salvation is totally reliant on God's grace, not on your own works, as Ephesians 2 verses 8-9 teaches. For by grace are ye saved through faith, and that not of yourselves. It is the gift of God, not of works, lest any man should boast.
I repeat this in just about every Protestant response video, but I'm going to have to do it again here. Faith and grace are not synonymous. Catholics absolutely believe that it's by God's grace that we have faith, and it's by God's grace that we do good works. It's all because of His grace. And I don't know if it was his shoddy editing or if this is actually how it came out of John MacArthur's mouth, but faith and grace alone, you've already got two things there. There's no faith alone there anymore. This is already inconsistent within a single sentence.
How can the Catholic Church accuse Protestants who believe God created heaven and earth in 6 days of heresy while simultaneously believing in and promoting the unscientific Big Bang Theory?
Okay, I can't tell if this guy is lazy or dishonest, because he can't just take a partial quote from a Jesuit read aloud by what appeared to be a Protestant minister or teacher and then apply that to the Pope. It doesn't work that way. And to call the Big Bang Theory unscientific is outright stupid. Now, I'm not an astrophysicist, but I do find the topic pretty fascinating. And I've read some of Stephen Hawking's popular work and some of William Lane Craig's work on the subject. And the Big Bang was developed by a Catholic astronomer who, along with other astronomers, essentially noted that the light they were observing in the universe was behaving as if it was coming from something that was actively moving away from us. And so as the universe is expanding, we can rewind that like a spiral, like a clock almost, down to a single point in time and space. Hence the Big Bang. Started in one spot and bang, expanded. Now don't think of explosion, think of expansion. And that's probably about as good as I'm going to do on this explanation right now. That said, what a phenomenal bit of evidence this could be for the creation of the universe. It shows a beginning to the universe. As Stephen Hawking himself wrote in A Brief History of Time, scientists didn't like this because there were implications that there would be a God.
This is how the American Museum of Natural History describes the Big Bang, or evolution of the universe. Our universe began with an explosion of space itself, the Big Bang. Starting from extremely high density and temperature, space expanded, the universe cooled, and the simplest elements formed. Gravity gradually drew matter together to form the first stars and the first galaxies. Galaxies collected into groups, clusters, and superclusters. Some stars died in supernova explosions whose chemical remnants seeded new generations of stars and enabled the formation of rocky planets. On at least one such planet, life evolved to consciousness.
A purely naturalistic and secular explanation of the Big Bang and the evolution of the universe should not be surprising coming from a government-funded institution. This does not mean this is precisely what Catholic astronomers believe. They don't take God out of the equation.
Where did the explosion come from? What led to the explosion? Where did the space come from?
Silly Protestant. Just like you, we would say, God made it. However, this does run the risk of becoming nothing more than a God of the gaps fallacy, which is something we definitely want to avoid. We arrive to this conclusion by determining that God is necessary for this to be true, not because we can't think of any other reason why it would be true.
One more question for Pope Francis and his predecessors who believe in the Big Bang. How did life come from non-life?
Does this guy actually think that unless you're a young Earth creationist, you have to be a naturalist? We are Catholics. We are Christians. We believe the Genesis account. We believe God made everything. We believe everything's sustained by God's grace. Like, what part of this is not coming through to this guy?
No evolutionist has been able to answer this question. Life cannot come from non-life. It has never and will never happen, and scientists know that. And some will argue that not knowing how living organisms can develop from non-living things does not matter.
No naturalist has ever been able to answer the question. Not evolutionist or someone who believes in evolution. And the skeptic is right to point this out. Just because you have a gap in knowledge doesn't mean you get to shove God there. If you don't know something, the answer is not automatically God did it and there's no other explanation. By that approach, which fundamentalists have done for a long time, people leave the faith when they discover that there are scientific explanations for things. If you tell kids that it rains because God is sad, and they grow up and they learn about the weather cycle, they're going to doubt God because of your nonsense.
Yes, it matters. We know how life developed on Earth, and you can find that in Genesis 1 and 2. Choosing not to believe it is your problem.
I challenge you, both the narrator of this video, if he ever listens, and you, the audience, to compare the narrative in Genesis 1 and 2 to the creation narratives of the ancient Near East. And see if you find any parallels, and see what differences you find. Because Genesis has a much cooler story to tell than whether or not God literally created in 6 days, and whether the earth is literally 6,000 years old. That's not the point. If you look at the very beginning of Genesis, the Spirit of God is hovering over the water. Now, to take a literalist approach, you have to say that water is literal. But no, water is an important aspect of the ancient Near East. When you see water or the sea or the ocean, it represents chaos. God is over the chaos. Whereas the other creation narratives, creation arises out of the chaos. God is over the chaos, restoring order, creating order. How much greater is that than just a simple play-by-play of how God may have decided to create the universe?
I believe in creation now, not just because the Bible teaches it, because when I first read the Bible, I tried to fit evolution in with the Bible. because I was sure that you just had to be an ignoramus to believe in divine creation because I couldn't explain it.
Again, you are free as a Catholic to believe in a young earth. However, believing in divine creation and believing in evolution are not mutually exclusive.
But the more I've studied, the more illogical evolution seems to me. And I've come where it's the only thing I'm left believing. It's, to me, the best answer scientifically.
As I said earlier, there's some young earth creationists that are quite brilliant. You have Danny Faulkner, you have Jason Lyle, you have Robert Sungenis. But even assuming that this guy actually read what these more brilliant creationists had to say, I doubt he looked at the evidence from the other side.
How did we get here? If it is by design and there's a God, then that means that we are accountable to God and we will give an answer to God someday for the lives that we live. That means you can't just do whatever feels good, that you are not just an animal, that there are morals, there are rights, and there's something that is defining right and wrong, and there's a judgment day.
Now, I do agree with him that we are accountable to God, and we can't just do whatever we want or what feels good, and that we do have a responsibility to be more than the animals. However, that's not something that you just get because God exists. If that was the case, you wouldn't have had these intellectuals 300 years ago who recognized the flaws of atheism but couldn't commit to Christianity becoming deists who believe that God did indeed create the world but no longer takes any interest in what occurs here.
And people really chafe at the idea they need to answer to God for their lives. So they try to remove God from the equation so they can do whatever feels good. You'd be surprised how closely tied atheism, evolution, and hedonism are.
I'm sorry if you are sick of hearing it, but I gotta repeat it. Evolution and divine creation are not mutually exclusive. Believing in evolution does not mean that you're going to suddenly become an extreme hedonist or abandon your belief in God. In fact, it seems, and this is purely anecdotal, but it seems that holding so firmly against evolution drives people away from God.
True science will always confirm the biblical account of creation to be correct.
No true scientist would ever put sugar in his porridge. I mean, evolution in his Bible. Anyways, this is known as the no true Scotsman fallacy. This is a fallacy that you see people commit a lot, but they also point it out a lot incorrectly. So let's get it straight here. An example would be if a Christian said, no true Christian would ever smoke cigarettes. Now, there's nothing in the Bible or in church history or anything else that would indicate that Christians should not smoke cigarettes. You shouldn't smoke cigarettes because it's bad for your health, and it's bad for the health of others around you. But if you choose to smoke cigarettes on your own, you may very well be a Christian. That is committing the no true Scotsman fallacy. However, if you say no true Christian denies the divinity of Jesus, that is no longer a no true Scotsman fallacy, because in order to be a Christian, you have to acknowledge the divinity of Jesus. So if you're going to say that true science does or doesn't point to something, there's a lot loaded in that statement. What do you mean by true science? Who's engaging in true science? Where does true science and fake science begin and end? Having said all that, what I can say with confidence about true science is that they are willing to be wrong if the evidence points that direction. By establishing that true science only leads to one conclusion, you are no longer doing science, you are now finding things that will fit your narrative.
According to the scientific law of biogenesis, life arises from previously existing life of its own kind. This scientific law is consistent with the Bible. And God created great whales and every living creature after their kind. Genesis 1, verse 21.
I've noticed that when this author quotes things, he often does tell you where he got the quote from, but not here. That's probably because the only place I can find this quote in this definition is from Christian apologetic websites. Not even academic Christian work, popular work. I plug these words into my school's library search index, and I get nothing. Any discussion of biogenesis usually comes from the 1800s, and it revolves around conversations of spontaneous generation, which is not what we're discussing right now. But even if it was, Catholics are Christians who believe in special creation. Even if you believe in evolution as a Catholic, you are not taking out God's role in that. So this guy is, most likely, being straight up dishonest. I do want to give people the benefit of the doubt, but this guy is so egregiously off that it just seems to ooze dishonesty.
And God said, "Let the earth bring forth the living creature after his kind. And God made the beast of the earth after his kind, and cattle after their kind. And God said, Let us make man in our image, after our likeness." Genesis 1, verses 24 to 26.
And right there you see it. He has to dishonestly tinker with definitions to make it fit what he believes the Bible is trying to communicate.
By the way, we are not gods or a kind of God, as some false preachers claim.
When I read in the Bible where he says, I am, I just smile and say, yes, I am too.
When God says, I am, we have no right to claim that we are I ams too. That is blasphemy.
Yeah, sure, but isn't this supposed to be about Catholics? Why are you showing us another ridiculous Protestant?
To the Catholic Church and other groups that teach that God was involved in the Big Bang or evolution, it is simply not enough to insert the name of God before or after evolution or the Big Bang to give it a Christian flavor, or worse, to disguise your denial of the one true God, the creator of the universe.
What arrogance and narcissism is it to say that if you don't accept my interpretation of this book, then you are not worshiping the one true God of the universe? Never mind the fact that it is the church that spread the gospel and spread the good news of the one true God all over the world. Now, most Protestants wear that sort of narcissism as a badge of pride, which is why they say bizarre things like, all you have to do to be saved is have faith alone in Jesus, but also if you don't believe in my version of the creation account, then you're probably not a real Christian.
You don't have to explain creation by scientific methodology. You can't. You can't.
I don't know why he would play this clip, because he earlier said that all true science points to creationism.
True science will always confirm the biblical account of creation to be correct.
I guess Johnny Mac disagrees.
Get past that notion and you'll free yourself from needless doubts and confusion. Now you can believe what the Bible says from the Creator who always speaks the truth, or you can take another option. You can believe Charles Darwin.
What an insane, garbage thing to say. You can either believe the God of the Bible, or you can believe in Isaac Newton. You can either believe the God of the Bible, or you can believe in Albert Einstein. You can believe in the God of the Bible, or you can believe in insert any scientist ever. Also, what is with this music?
I might just let you know from a biblical perspective that moving from God to Charles Darwin is a form of apostasy. It's a form of defection from the Christian faith. And you're following in a line from Rousseau and Descartes to Karl Marx, and Karl Marx and Darwin lived in the same 19th century. And people like Nietzsche and John Dewey and humanism.
Oh, I can do that too. Moving from Jesus to Martin Luther is a form of apostasy. And you can follow that line. Martin Luther, John Calvin, John Smith, they all lived in roughly the 16th century.
You can either accept that God created the world in 6 days as recorded in Genesis 1 and 2, or reject that God is the creator of the universe.
This is, of course, an absolutely ridiculous statement. This whole video has been ridiculous. You can absolutely be a phenomenal Christian, faithful in all your beliefs, and not hold to his interpretation of the scripture. In fact, Inspiring Philosophy has a fantastic video tracing the modern creationist movement to the Seventh-day Adventists, and that the way that this argument is made is completely unknown to the church for almost 2,000 years. To repeat myself yet again, determining what God is trying to communicate to us through this text is so much greater than trying to force a specific interpretation of the text.
There are 3 important questions to ask in life, and you may have asked one or all of them at some point in your life. Where did I come from? What am I doing here? And where am I going?
And the church has faithfully answered those questions for 2,000 years. Any one of you who is not a Catholic listening, I urge you to come join the Catholic Church. Be part of the church that Jesus actually founded. Now, thank you all for listening. Go ahead and hit like. Go ahead and share it. Go ahead and comment. If you didn't like it, give it a thumbs down. Just let me know why in the comments. And lastly, patrons, thank you. I never forget you guys. I love you guys, and I appreciate everything you guys do. If you want to be a patron and earn some cool merch, be part of the club, go ahead and click the link below. And as always, and remember, go to Mass.